Hundreds of thousands of riders, with darkened eyes and hearts of stone, drew their swords not for glory, but for annihilation. They were not immortals, yet they chained death itself, until the world turned to ashes beneath the hooves of their steeds.
Genghis Khan created one of the largest armies in history, with hundreds of thousands of soldiers. They attacked with terrifying speed and were masters of psychological warfare. How did the Mongols fight their wars? What were the strange strategies of the Mongol army? What unusual war techniques did they use? And what horrific crimes did they commit? Cannibalism, human shields, poisoned arrows and scorpions, fire and blood. You'll find out in this video. Genghis Khan united the tribes of the Mongolian steppe into an empire stretching from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. It was one of the largest in history. His army included not only cavalrymen, but also infantry and archers. Cavalry made up 60% of the Mongol army. The rest were infantrymen and archers. The cavalry consisted mainly of light cavalry, which consisted of independent horsemen armed with bows and arrows, and able to move very quickly. These warriors used every opportunity to get behind enemy lines to disrupt their communications and logistics. Also in the Mongol army, there were heavy cavalrymen who participated directly in the battle. In addition to weapons, these warriors carried shields and wore armor. Although horses were the main means of transportation for the Mongols, they also used elephants in battle. Yes, elephants. The Mongols were the first to use these huge animals on the battlefield in Europe. They captured them during their campaign against Khwarezmia and used them to break through enemy infantry, crush carts, and scare the enemy. But still, most of the Mongol army were archers.
Bows of death, the shadow of poisoned arrows, Mongol archers, like spirits of darkness, would rise from the heart of the dust. Their arrows, venomous and silent, tore through the hearts of enemies from afar.
They were excellent marksmen and could shoot accurately at the enemy from a very long distance. In fact, the Mongol army is considered the first in history that used firearms. Genghis Khan got the idea of such weapons from the Chinese and ordered his craftsmen to create copies of the Chinese guns, which were called fire lances. The warriors who wielded these weapons were called thunderers because of the loud sound of the guns. Mongols used bows and arrows in various ways in battle. One of them was the arrow shield. The Mongols placed several large shields close together, forming a wall. The warriors stood behind them and shot arrows through narrow slits in the shields. Arrows were often poisoned. Mongols used catapults, trebuchets, and other siege weapons to destroy enemy fortifications. Siege towers were also used, which were designed to bring the warrior close to the top of the city walls, where they could open the gates from the inside. Mongols also used torture to get confessions or useful information from their prisoners. For example, the victim was suspended by ropes from a tree or post until their arms and legs were dislocated. Sometimes information was extracted under torture. Mongols didn't disdain anything.
The dance of terror, speed and deception on the field of blood. Like lightning, the Mongols split the earth, covering up to 200 kilometers a day, with ominous yurts and ruthless columns. They bypassed cities, massacring garrisons across the plains.
And not spend too much time looking for forage on the road. They also built yurts, portable dwellings, so they could quickly move from one place to another. Speed was one of the main factors in the victories of the Mongol army. They struck suddenly where and when the enemy did not expect it. Genghis Khan's troops moved so fast that they often managed to bypass fortified settlements, having previously dealt with the garrisons in the field. A good example is the city of Bukhara. When the Mongols approached it, the local garrison went out to meet them, thinking they could defeat such a small detachment. But when they returned to the city, They found that it had already been captured. Psychological warfare was another important factor in the success of the Mongol army. Terror was one of their weapons. The Mongols spread rumors about their cruelty, exaggerating their atrocities to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies before they even met them in battle. They invented legends about themselves, calling themselves the descendants of the sky, gods who sent them to punish the inhabitants of the Middle East. The Mongols claimed that they were destined to conquer the world. Such propaganda worked. People surrendered cities without a fight, expecting mercy from the Mongols, but never getting it. The Mongols instilled terror not only in ordinary people, but also in their enemies on the battlefield. Once the Mongols let some of their defeated opponents go with the message that if they abandoned the fortifications, the Mongols would not attack them. The next day, the city was completely destroyed.
The slaughterhouse of history, the crimes of the sons of darkness. The army of Genghis was the very embodiment of cruelty. 40 million souls, 11% of the world, fell beneath their blade. Cities were plundered, villages burned, and skulls were piled into hills of death.
The army of Genghis Khan committed terrible crimes. It was incredibly cruel and merciless, especially towards women and children. Historians estimate that the Mongols killed about 40 million people during their campaigns, which was about 11% of the world's population at the time. During the siege of Baghdad in 1258, the Mongols killed everyone in the city, including women and children. Historical sources claim that at least 100,000 people were killed then. The Mongols robbed, tortured, and burned entire cities, villages, and hamlets. They killed everyone in their path, regardless of social status, age, or gender. They stabbed men, crushed women, and burned children. After the battles, the Mongols cut off the heads of the slain enemies and made piles of skulls. The Mongols had a very strange custom. After a battle, the warriors shaved the heads of the slain enemy, scalping them. The Mongols believed that this ceremony desecrated the enemy and deprived him of honor. But that wasn't all. Mongols often chopped off heads after execution or battle and dried them over a fire. Then they put them on pikes and stuck them on the walls of their fortress to intimidate enemies. The Mongols were probably the first in history to create something like a hall of fame of their victims. But if the enemy was particularly honored, his head was cut off, dipped in honey, and hung in a cage over the entrance to the ruler's yurt. In 1219, Genghis Khan led his army on a campaign against the Khwarezmid Empire. The Mongols divided their forces into 4 parts and attacked from all sides at once. The allies of the empire sent to help only made matters worse. Each of them thought the Mongols were a separate army and tried to defeat them on their own. But there were so many enemies that they had to combine their forces and flee. But even that didn't help. Genghis Khan pursued the fleeing enemy without stopping until he caught up with them and exterminated him. In the end, only a few escaped, hiding in the mountains and in the deserts. But Khan wasn't interested in chasing them. He wanted to show the remnants of the army what awaited them if they didn't surrender. So the Mongols set up camp near the river and lit a fire. Then they took all the loot from the city they had just captured, loaded it onto ships, and set it on fire. The ships sailed away down the river, setting fire to everything in their path, houses, barns, and other buildings. That was how the Mongols punished those who dared to resist them.
The ambush of shadows, Kalka, and the blood-soaked legends. At the Battle of Kalka, 1223, the Mongols appeared like spirits of death. With 20,000 soldiers, they brought an army of 80,000 to ruin. Feigned retreat, sinister ambushes, and sudden assaults led the Rus into the snare of death.
One of the most famous battles involving the Mongols was the Battle of the Kalka River in 1223. The Russian princes called for help from all nearby principalities and assembled a huge army of 8,000 warriors. The Mongols, on the other hand, numbered only 20,000 soldiers. Despite their superiority in numbers, the Russians lost the battle. The Mongol army maneuvered well on the battlefield, hitting the Russians on both flanks and preventing them from escaping. Plus, the Mongols used psychological warfare. They pretended to be scared and ran away, but then turned around and attacked. The Russians thought they had won, but then hordes of Mongols who were hiding nearby pounced on them. It was a real ambush. After the battle, the Mongols continued to pursue the fleeing Russians along the Kalka River for 2 whole days. They killed everyone who fell behind. Those who wanted to hide in the forest were burned alive along with their possessions. There were horrible scenes of people being burned alive. No wonder the news of the battle reached Italy and France and became known to the author of The Tale of the Two Cities, describing the events of the French Revolution. And that's what makes this event relevant today. The Mongols used catapults, trebuchets, and other siege weapons to destroy enemy fortifications. For example, the Mongols besieged the city of Kumis and built a large dam in the river to divert water from the city. Without water, the residents of Kumis surrendered. And then the Mongols broke into the city and slaughtered everyone there. Some historians believe that Genghis Khan was actually a woman. The fact is that according to ancient Mongolian traditions, the names of women and men are often the same. Moreover, the word Khan is a title that can be worn by both a man and a woman. There is a legend that Temujin, the future Genghis Khan, was taken prisoner during a battle with a rival clan. He and his wife were forced to flee. They wandered the desert for several days until they came across a rival. The warrior took them in and gave them food and drink. Later, it turned out that it was a woman. She hid her face behind a veil, but Temujin recognized her. It was his biological sister who had been kidnapped years ago. The warrior took Temujin and his wife to her home. There he stayed for several months. Temujin's son was born there, whom he named Juji. And the warrior raised him as her own. When Temujin finally learned the truth about the mysterious warrior, he married her, making her his second wife. But she was older than Temujin and bore the title of Great Khan. Some historians believe that the warrior may have been the leader of a local tribe of women warriors. As you can see, the Mongol army was a terrible force. Its soldiers knew no mercy. They were ready to kill everyone, both women and children. What do you think about this army? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and that's all for today. See you soon. Bye.